Welcome to a Monday night. One of my commenters wanted to see Blinka on a Raspberry Pi. Well, we are going to do Blinka on a Raspberry Pi. Now, I've already done a dry run on it all, but I'm going to go through the steps that you need to know. So, what we have here, over here, Raspberry Pi 5 with its custom heatsink coolie thing. I've wired it into a breadboard, so I've sent the 5-volt line to this side, the 3.3 volt stuff to this side. I have sent one pin to here, through a resistor to an LED. You can see the LED kind of flickers because of my hand. Now, we know the LED works because, there we go. Normally that's how bright it is. This is my primitive little switch. Now, this side, on the other hand, comes off the I2C ports, and I have a temperature humidity sensor. So we're going to see that in action. There was a few things I encountered when I was doing this. If you are using the Raspberry Pi 4, make sure you have a 5-volt 3.5 amp power supply. I had a 5-volt 3 amp over here. I thought it would be more than enough for the Raspberry Pi 4. I was tripping the little voltage warnings. And then when I was originally using my Raspberry Pi 5 to do stuff, whoa. Sometimes I could see the desktop. Sometimes I couldn't see the desktop. Weird things were happening all over the place. Now, this device over here is just my USB capture. So we're routing the Pi over through the USB capture so you can actually see it on here. So if I go up here and I turn it on, there's the Raspberry Pi desktop. Okay. I'm also going to connect to it by VNC so we can get a bigger picture. Now, one of the things about all this, actually, I'm just going to adjust something here. Oh, I am at max already. There's a couple of quirks in the newest Raspberry Pi OS that you have to be aware of. So when you do your install, you're going to go to Raspberry Pi, you're going to do the image, and you're going to run, if you're smart, you will run doink internet. Here, where is it? Utility settings, system, utilities, there. The imaging program. Now you can have it go off and get the ISO for you and then put it on the SD card. And the way I did that was, where's that little gizmo of mine? I seem to misplay. I have from Adafruit a little really nice USB. Here it is. This thing. You put your micro SD card in here and you plug it into USB-C port over there on my computer, and you write out your disk image. I assume that you understand from doing Raspberry Pis, that's how you get your OS onto the disk. So when I originally booted it, but not set it up, done the settings, that's when I encountered the power problem on here. And what I had to do is go off to Amazon yesterday and buy a 5.1 volt, 5 amp Raspberry Pi 5 power supply. Happens to be a CanaKit version, but you can get different ones from different people. They average about 22 bucks Canadian for me. But I had to get one. I realized when I looked back at the invoice for the Raspberry Pi 5, I hadn't bought it. And I spent like hours on Sunday trying to figure out why I was having such issues with the Pi. But that's what it was. So, after you put your OS on and everything, go through the setups that he uses. In fact, I would, when you're writing the image out, there's an option to do some presets. I would turn on the SSH. I would turn on a few things in there that they offer. You could turn on the Wi-Fi, but I'm cabled over here. Red cable. I'm hardwired into the network over here. I could set it up as Wi-Fi, but I didn't. Make sure you do all that pre-done stuff as you write the image. That way, when you boot it up, right, and you get the initial stuff, you'll know you can SSH in right away and stuff, right? So I also added to the Raspberry Pi install. Let me just turn the USB capture on. So you must have recognized this right there. Well, that of course is our PyCharm. So I actually got also PyCharm working to run our CircuitPython code onto the Raspberry Pi. Now the big difference between this one and a microcontroller, the Raspberry Pi itself, like literally, even though you're in a Linux OS and everything, is the microcontroller. So everything gets dumped into normal space, not libraries uploaded to an MCU or anything like that, or code.py put on an MCU. No, all that stuff is actually on the Raspberry Pi. And you can have a number of things. I think you can still name things like code.py if you really want to, but you really don't need that. It could be bob.py for all it cares. So make sure you get all that. And I'm just going to turn this back off again. Now, other thing you might want to have handy, and I do happen to have one. I have my CanaKit GPIO thingy. And if you're playing with things like LEDs and stuff like that, you're going to need resistors. Have your little resistor card or your little resistor wheel so that you can calculate resistors. And of course have female, male, standard jumper cables for breadboards. So I have that one spare here. You can get from Adafruit these type where it starts out as a JST connector and turns into pins for a breadboard. It's handy for doing this stunt. You can also get she made little daughter boards you could put on here that have a JST out one end and the 4 pins out on the other end. So you could do this style of cable where you connect it to that and you connect it to that. I don't have any of those, but I do have lots of these. So now to begin, after you've installed, make sure you do your updates. You're going to need to know it. And then you're going to visit a particular page. And that one. So this page, if you follow its instructions, it will get you Blinka up and running. But there's one caveat in here I don't particularly like. You're forced into a virtual environment for Python. In reality, you should not be forced into that. That should be optional if you really want to isolate into a container. But what happens in virtual environments, and PyCharm does this also, well, one person's virtual environment is not another person's virtual environment. And it's tricky to get them to share things and do things like that. So this was an issue I ran into yesterday. So you install you do your Python, you do your updates, you do their setup virtual environment. By the way, this is the real stupid part about this. You have to do this every time you close the session and restart. You actually have to do this Python 3 environment, site packages, and then activate it. It's not automatically done for you. You then go and do the Adafruit shell. They have this thing. And then you can go run their Raspberry Blinka Pi, go get their script and run the script. And the script will go along and blah, 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 and install everything you need. And once you're done, from a command prompt for point on the Raspberry Pi, not PyCharm, but a command prompt, you should be able to run you should be able to run Python scripts that have CircuitPython code in it and access these GPIOs. Now, there's options, of course, in the Raspberry Pi's OS setup to turn on GPIO, to turn on I2C, to turn on SPI, to turn on one wire. So you might as well turn all that. If you do turn on the one wire, pin number 4 over here is not really available to you. You need to move over and use another pin. So pin number 4, GPIO number 4. right there. That pin right there. So I moved my control pin for the LED to 17. So you can, I guess, do a manual install. I did not do one. I did do the check, make sure I had my I2C on, and I got the output from it. I didn't have to do this part yet. Okay. I did not enable a second SPI, but you probably could do it in the future. Then you have the more or less bigger Blinka test. What this really does is just tests a input output, and this is where in the code, see the D4? This should be D17 because D4 might be occupied by the one wire protocol, and you'll get an error. And you do this sort of thing at the command line. Now, this little thing in here might be the command, but it's not what the prompt will say. You're going to see up here, let me see, do I have it open still? So if we go over here, I've logged into the Raspberry Pi, and since it's a brand new session, I have to go and do, yes, you guessed it. So I'm going to go work Python, and I have a setup shell script that does part of this. And then if I cat the setup, I really need to fix the shell script because I need to do the bottom one here, activating it. Notice the prompt change. env, then Python. Now you're within that virtual environment of Python's, kind of like a container or shit. And that's the thing that drives me annoying because you keep have to set this up all the time. Right? And then, as I said, you have this test program. So I happen to have the test program right here. So if I go Python 3, I spelled it right. There you go. The output what you expect from running the test. Right there. Okay. So the digital I/O part, that's where I was testing with an LED to make sure it works. As you see, one LED, some resistors. I didn't use the button, and I didn't have any of that stuff. In fact, I do have this, but it's the wrong one. It's not for a Pi 4. This is actually a correct GPIO. Mine only is actually for a Pi 3 or Pi 2, I think, because it only goes up to 24 pins, not 40 pins. So you wire up your little resistor, and there's your Blinky test code. And whoops, am I not showing you things? Let me try again. And let's go back to this. So what I did, and I apparently commented on, and I forgot to show you, I ran this program. And I got this output. Now I'm going to do the LED one. I basically set this up without the button. And I already have this Blinky code in here. So if I go back to this and I go and change this to and I go back to here, there you go. Blinka is basically running on the Pi. The hard part is just not getting confused a bit by the website a bit and doing their stuff. So it'll run forever because there's no stop in here. Right, you have to control C it. Now the last one I did just for the hell of it that's not on here, I did I2C. And that was Mr. Temp. So you can see the temperature sensor is getting temperature and humidity from this room. Now, the bigger one I wanted to do was show off PyCharm. Now, I can do this, but I ran into a couple of issues. First of all, how to VNC the desktop. So if we go back to here and I turn on back the USB cache, we can look at the desktop. Up here in the top right corner, see this R? That's the VNC server. Now, the first thing that happened in here, and this is really annoying, is, of course, this is on Wayland. And Wayland requires a lot tougher authentication to actually share the desktop. And it had all this crap about certs and everything. And I'm going, why are you doing this? So if you run raspi config at the command line after you SSH in, there's an option in there in advanced to switch back to X11. Switching back to X11, which is what I did, I then installed the X11 VNC. So I had the standard X11 VNC. That led to this old way of doing it, username, password, that sort of thing, right? Now, the second problem I encountered with this was what did the VNC call it? It's like the API call for the type of encryption password handling system. And apparently they're using 3.8, and for some reason in this Raspberry Pi, it doesn't accept that. If you're using Remina. So you bring up Remina, and I've shown it before. Let me go here. This is Remina, and I had the Raspberry Pi in here, but it won't connect. And I fought for this for like hours trying to figure out why this program, VNC, doesn't want to connect. I fiddle with the username, password, blah, 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 did these things at command line, nothing. I had to actually go and get real VNC. Now, the problem with real VNC, if you don't pay attention to their prompts when you start it, they want you to log into the cloud. Why doesn't everything these days have you log into the cloud? You don't need to log into the cloud to make a VNC connection from one internal box to another. That's just stupid. Utterly stupid. So there's a little toggle down when you do this. It says you make a VNC connection without logging in. And then you get this prompt. And I've already logged in. So if we go like this, and I have to drag it from the other window. There's our Raspberry Pi desktop. Okay. So what I did is similar to what I did for the PyCharm install. I this time went and got PyCharm for ARM versus PyCharm for x86. You can just get the community edition. I installed it all. I made an icon so that it shows up in the Pi programming menu. Right there, community edition. Set it all up. Created a project. And then hit a roadblock. I couldn't run CircuitPython stuff. Even though I could add the CircuitPython stuff, the Blinka stuff, whatever, it all turned out to be this frickin' virtual environment. So what you have to do in this one, that whole setup you did for the CL command line, you have to repeat it, but in this virtual environment. So now you're setting up Blinka twice because they're not sharing. And I'm not that much of an expert on these stupid virtual environments. I don't like using them, right? Because they just get in the way, right? There probably has a use in a more advanced, oh yeah, you're being more secure, blah, blah, all that bullshit, right? But in our case, we just want to run basic CircuitPython code, and we couldn't do it. But once you create the project, open the terminal, see that you're in the virtual environment, then you run those install steps, right? So you do the Python shell thing from Adafruit, then you do the download the Blinka install files, right? I think they're even here. Yeah, raspiblinka.py, and you do your install. And when you all complete it, now this virtual environment is rigged to do it. And once that was done, I just had to copy the files over. Guess what? I hit another roadblock. You go to like in Visual Studio Code and you have a project open here. You want to add a file from somewhere else in your file tree. There's just an option in the menu that says, open file. Not in here. You do this, there is no open file. You're going, well, how do you do it? You think, well, maybe if I go here to the settings, Python structure, and I want to add an open file. Nope. And then what you'd end up doing is you go down, I think it was, where did I see that? This menu up here. Oh, look, now there's an open. So what you have to do is you go open, you browse to the thing where you want to have your file, in the case of Python. And let's say setup.sh, okay? You say, okay. It's excluded because it's actually not yet part of the project. So what you do here is you make sure it's highlighted, and you go and right click and you go down to, is it in this one? No, it's in this one. And you say refactor. Not that refactor. You have to find the refactor that belongs to this, and it's like really stupid procedure. Now you had it already running once. It's just freaking annoying me. So we have that highlighted. And I think it's a refactor, not copy directory. Version control. How did I do this? There's another refactor somewhere in here. Yeah, right there. In this blank area, refactor, copy file. It asks what you want to call. We'll still call it sh. We don't want it in that place. We want it in somewhere else. So we go like that. PyCharm project, CP1, okay. And we say okay. Now we have a copy. We can get rid of that one. Showing up in here. Now there's our S setup. Stupidest way I've ever seen just to put a damn file in the project. What were they even thinking? What a convoluted path just to get a file. So I wanted to copy, for example, Blinky, temp, and test, right, into here so I could use them. No, doesn't work that way. But we can test them out now. I have test. There's that one. If we look at our console prompt down here, I can run this now. See downstairs? Right there at the bottom. If we go to Blinka and we say the blinky LED, and we can see, I'll turn that off. Oops, 2 mouse cursors, doesn't make it one. There's our blinky LED, right? We can come back up here and turn it off. Okay, our temp one. There it is. So now within PyCharm, we are running, but the caveat is you have to install Blinka a second time, and you have to install it into PyCharm's virtual environment. Now this is going to be stupid, incredibly dumb. If you make another project you're going to get another virtual environment. And guess what? You're going to be running again. That stupid install. Now we'll have like 3 copies of Blinka and all that crap in, but only self-contained within these virtual environments. Right? Dumb. Utterly dumb. I think I'm going to have to figure out how to go back to the more older way of doing it, because I've done Blinka before on Raspberry Pi 4s and 3s, and I did not have to do this crap. Right? This just makes everything overly complicated when it doesn't need to be. So I'm just going to stop that. So, bunch of catchies that got me, but eventually I do have a working layout. So what I'm going to try to find out is, because there's a section in the install installing here where there's manual. This is all the automated install. What I might try to do is just simply do the manual install. So we've done all this, and what we want to do is install all that manually. And see if we can get out of the virtual environment. But I don't think I'll get out of the virtual environment from PyCharm itself, because by looks of it, it just wants to automatically create virtual environments every time you make a project. So, and in theory, I saw somewhere on notes that you're supposed to be able to share virtual environment contents. And there was a thing in PyCharm on doing that also, right? But I'm not even sure if I have it activated properly yet. I would have to create another project, not do the Blinky install, and then see if I was actually seeing everything from the first project. Don't know. So there you are. One Raspberry Pi 5 running Blinka, hooked to a breadboard, using its GPIO pins and running crap. To me, yes, it's kind of nice to do stuff like this on the Raspberry Pi, but I think for the cost of the unit and it's what it does and all the work you have to do to get this set up, it's overkill. You're better off, I mean, if you want to blink LEDs or do I2C, is simply microcontrollers. Not that one. Right? You know, RP2040s. This is what this is. This is a Cytron RP2040 with speaker, 2 LEDs, 2 I2C ports, right? And of course, I mean, you've seen I've had tons of different ones here. You know, Adafruit's KB, or you could do Trinkies, right? Or you could do ESP32s, or you can do ESP32s. This particular one is a 32S2, and you can actually get CircuitPython on here. So, but you get the idea. Just gonna put back the Trinkies, and that's in the RP2040s. And these were the ones I was playing with recently. Now, you can also do this, treat this like a computer, and you hook this up to this, and you program this through here. Just like I'm using a PC to do it, but you would do that. But that's, I think, it. Unless you guys have any other questions about this, or want me to go over something specific. Remember, the web page is your friend. That particular one. Out of the Learn Guides, right? Installing Blinka on a Raspberry Pi. Oh, there is one other thing. This you should know from the PyCharm. Since this is on the OS basis and you're not pushing up to a microcontroller, you can just go to PyPy and load. And in my case, I had to go get the temperature sensor module, and you would go off and get a whole bunch of other modules. So just look up your modules here. See, there's a billion of them. And almost all the Adafruit ones begin with Adafruit. So you just say Adafruit dash something, and usually you'll find it. You could put that in there, Adafruit dash. If you wait a moment, there you go. There's all the Adafruit libraries. MIDI, Wave, Ducky. Ducky? I don't know what Ducky is. But you get the idea, right? So there are a few in there. I think if you did Neo, I don't know if it comes up as Adafruit Neo Pixel. No. But if you back off and just say Neo Pix, I think that's all you need. There's the Neo Pixel library. And there's the Adafruit version of it. I think they're almost identical anyway, but you get the idea. Sometimes it's Adafruit Circuit Python and something. So, and then once they're installed, of course, the second problem, of course, they're installing basically into this library area in the virtual environment. Yeah. So, if I was to go probably to the command line, right, and do it from that Blinka, I would have to do it all over again. I would have to install it. So, but that's it for a Monday night. I have to go and slave at work tomorrow. Where's my stop button? Stop recording.